Hello, my name is Arin Sambatero. I'm with King County's Office of Equity and Social Justice. Welcome to your Equity and Social Justice Strategic Plan module for your Supervisor Nuts and Bolts training. As we get started today, I want to begin with a land acknowledgement. We are on the ancestral lands of the Muckleshoot, Snoqualmie, Puyallup, Tulalip, and Suquamish tribes and the Duwamish people. Our region benefits tremendously from the generations of Native people on whose land we currently live and who today continue to fight for their rights and to protect and promote their culture, language, customs, and values, and their future. In the module today, we will learn about why and how this ESJ strategic plan was created, our ESJ theory of change, the overall structure and content of the plan, the link between the plan and investing in you, your responsibilities and opportunities to implement the ESJ plan as a manager and supervisor, the specific actions you can take to support your employees in understanding and implementing equity work, and resources that you can tap into within your department, agency, and also at the county level to support you in this work. We know that King County is a resilient region for many communities who live here. It's a prosperous region for many communities who live here. For example, we have high life expectancy compared to the national and global averages. We continue to have a strong economy. We are a stronger community because of our growing diversity of all kinds. And we have a highly educated region compared to the nation. And yet, race and place matter in King County. Race and place predict the quality of life in King County. The brutal reality of racism and bias throughout our society and institutions continue to harm and hold back Black, Indigenous, and other people of color nationally, in Washington State, and in King County. Black, Indigenous people of color experience disproportionately worse outcomes in our community in areas such as health, access to housing, and good paying jobs, educational attainment, income, incarceration rates, and more. That is one of the main reasons that the equity work even started at the county. So let's look at the history of where we started with our equity work. Before 2008, equity work in King County really focused on disparities and disproportionalities in areas like health and criminal justice. It was very much work that was happening in certain program areas, in certain places, really championed by employees and leaders who understand the impact of equitable outcomes and the ability for their programs to support that transformation. But the equity work was not coordinated. Then, under the leadership of Executive Ron Sims, the county officially launched Equity and Social Justice as an initiative in 2008. And it continued to have strong commitment from Executive Constantine and King County Council to help integrate equity in county work with the adoption of Equity and Social Justice Ordinance and also the Fair and Just Principles in the King County Strategic Plan in 2010. Fast forward to 2015, our Office of Equity and Social Justice was created. As a part of our office's work, we launched into the development and creation of our Equity and Social Justice Strategic Plan. Since that time until now and moving forward, we will continue to adopt leading with racial justice as a part of our countywide value and to continue to center and make progress on centering equity. The community conditions around disparities and also the opportunity to coordinate our equity work more intentionally across the county was one of the defining reasons for why we launched into the effort of creating an equity and social justice strategic plan. So let me tell you a little bit about how the plan was created, because often in doing equity work, the how is as important as the what. In creation of the plan, we wanted to make sure that certain things were absolutely central to our approach. We wanted to be bold. We knew that we wanted to impact lives and change disparities. We wanted the equity work to be more powerful, connected, and comprehensive. We wanted to be data supported and values driven. and fundamentally to be co-created with county employees and communities so that we have a shared responsibility and accountability for achieving our equity and social justice vision. As a part of that co-creation approach, we engaged with over 1,200 employees from all parts of King County government, from frontline staff to organizational leaders and department agency directors. And nearly every agency of King County participated in creating what is now the Equity and Social Justice Strategic Plan. Similarly, we had an incredibly robust approach to community engagement, where we partnered with more than 100 different community partners representing a diverse set of perspectives from all across our King County region. So we can truly stand by our effort and our intention around co-creation. That co-creation process resulted in a vision for equity in King County, a vision of a King County where all people have equitable opportunities to thrive. We also advanced our definition of what we mean by equity. Equity, as a part of our strategic plan and moving forward, is defined as the full and equal access to opportunities, power, and resources so that all people achieve their full potential and thrive. Equity is an ardent journey toward well-being as defined by those most negatively impacted. And that portion is key. As a part of our strategic plan effort, we also made a commitment to lead with racial justice, which means that we dismantle systems, policies, and practices that perpetuate structural racism, inequities, and different forms of discrimination based on power and privilege. Now I want to show you a little video clip that was created in 2017 about why it is that we're leading with racial justice. Please note that some of the employees that are shown here have since left the county for employment or have moved around and assumed different roles and responsibilities in the county. And all of the employees that are showcased in this work, in this video, are some of the institutional leaders that really helped us arrive on our journey with equity work and have made it possible where we're continuing to make progress in our equity work at the county.
You know, it's 2017, and yet people of color still face pervasive and deep disparities in their everyday lives, economic disparities, health disparities, and that's why we've made the decision to lead with race, to prioritize racial justice in our equity and social justice activities.
It's never been clearer that race is still a problem and needs to be brought more to the forefront and not just be sort of simmering in the background.
A lot of people here are doing really well, but when you look detailed into the numbers, you find that we have some very, very significant inequities. Not inequalities, inequities. And those inequities are very stark.
When we look at all of the data, one thing just keeps coming out as being more detrimental, more of an impact than anything else, and it is disparities based on race.
When we look at some of the conditions that we have an influence on, whether it's exposure to flooding rivers or hazardous materials that may be in homes or access to parks and trails, we do see that the disparities are more pronounced when looking through a racial lens than when looking at a gender or sexual orientation or even, in many cases, incomes.
But let's focus on those places and those people, which are heavily people of color as well, where we have some of those greatest needs.
We're able to really focus on the items and those things that are really perhaps some of the most pervasive issues that have prevented people of color from advancing.
Become intentional in dismantling those systems that disadvantage non-white groups.
put the resources and the attention where needs are greatest. And as we identify where those racial inequities exist, that's where we need to be putting our emphasis.
We are leading with race, but while we are leading with race, discrimination of any kind toward anybody is not okay and will not be tolerated at King County.
We're not forgetting everyone else. We're not forgetting other people, other oppressions that exist.
It's acknowledging that race, racism, and whiteness has shaped outcomes for not just individuals in our communities, but our communities at large and our society at large.
It's not about guilt. It's actually about acknowledging that something is wrong and we need to do differently.
We cannot become the kind of place we really want to be, a truly just and equitable community and society, until we focus on dismantling, upending the policies and the practices that have perpetuated racism across our society.
Now that you have a good understanding of why we're leading with racial justice, I want to take a few minutes to walk you through our theory of change, which is essentially an outline for how to create change. In our equity work, we're applying a theory of change that fundamentally shifts the county away from policies and practices that react to problems and crises, and toward investments that address root causes. We use the stream as a metaphor to define our theory of change. What you're seeing here is what we call the unhealthy stream. On the right side of the stream is what we call downstream, and the very left side of the stream is what we call upstream. In the downstream, we see that there are outcomes where government programs historically have tended to react to problems and treat poor individual and family level outcomes. Outcomes and individual and family levels where racial disproportionality and racial disparities exist and are really high. We understand then that these outcomes are actually created by conditions in the midstream. These conditions are a result of past policies, systems, and practices that have resulted in adverse social, physical, economic, and health conditions for our communities. Conditions such as limited and unsafe parks, lack of affordable housing or dilapidated housing, disproportionality in the justice system, pollution and toxic exposure. Here, these conditions disproportionately harm our Black, Indigenous, and other people of color communities. And these conditions in our society, according to our theory, are created by things that are upstream. Those things that are upstream are the policies, practices, systems, and structures, including those in government that have sustained and even contributed to inequities, such as structural racism and discrimination, such as structural divestment and a lack of access to resources and decision-making, things such as class and gender bias, and ongoing continued cross-generational inequities. So we understand that this is how the unhealthy stream works to create inequities. If we want to create equitable outcomes, then what does the healthy stream look like? In order to do that, we need to understand that inequities are not random. They're caused by past and current decisions, systems of power, privilege, policies, and implementation of those policies. We also know that what inequities are differences in well-being that disadvantage an individual or group in favor of another. That these are systemic, patterned, and must be changed. We have control over how well we can change them. This informs our theory of change in order to create equitable outcomes. So now I want to tell you about the healthy stream that creates equity. Since we know that systems and structures create inequitable conditions in our community and also for individuals and families, then we really need to be able to tackle and be focused upstream so that we can develop pro-equity policies, practices, and systems to address root causes. That means that we are leading with racial justice because race is one of the defining factors for quality of life outcomes. and that we need to be able to create inclusion and belonging for our community so that all people are able to have equitable opportunities to thrive. If we are being pro-equity, if we're leading with racial justice, if we're able to create inclusion and belonging, then our theory is that we're changing the conditions in our community, that our pro-equity systems are a result in improved community conditions in the determinants of equity, where we're seeing or eliminating racialized outcomes in our community conditions. And thereby, we're creating outcomes for our families and individuals to be able to thrive regardless of race and place. Some of the ways that we're applying our theory of change are through targeted universalism, which really means that we're defining outcomes for all. We're identifying obstacles faced by specific groups and tailoring strategies and building on the assets of those groups to be able to address their barriers. As you heard our executive say, that means we're also dismantling systems of power and privilege and racial injustice in favor of equitable access to resources and decisions. It means that we're focusing on people and places where needs are the greatest, such as our low-income communities, our Black, Indigenous, and other people of communities, our immigrant refugee communities, and communities with language access needs. And that we're being inclusive in creating processes to be inclusive and to make sure that people, particularly our communities most in need, are included early, continuously, and meaningfully so that they are positioned to be able to define the solutions that work for them. We're also advancing our theory of change through our strategies. There are 4 strategies that are paramount to advancing our equity and social justice strategic plan. Investing upstream and where needs are greatest. That we're investing in community partnership to really demonstrate partnership and meaningful co-creation. And that we're investing in our employees that are responsible for delivering on our equity and social justice goals and for moving the institution forward. And we also recognize that many of our employees, particularly those in the front lines, those who identify as Black, Indigenous, and from people of color communities, experience institutional inequities in disproportionate ways relative to those who are white and in upper management and hold other positions of power. And we understand that in order for us to truly be transformative in our work, we have to be transparent and accountable in how we do this, particularly in leadership. Now that you have a good sense of our theory of change, I want to take a few minutes to review with you the content and structure of our ESJ strategic plan. Our plan is structured in 3 parts. The first part is our 6 operational goal areas. It's designed to get our house in order. In this part of the plan, we're advancing pro-equity policies, systems, and practices in 6 areas of governance: leadership, operations and services, plans, policies, and budgets, workforce and workplace equity, community partnerships, communications and education, and facility and system improvements. The next part of our plan, we call the pro-equity policy agenda. It's designed to advance equitable outcomes for our communities most in need. The policy agenda is focused on expanding access to equitable opportunity and outcomes in 8 areas: child and youth development, jobs and economic development, environment and climate, health and human services, housing, information and technology, transportation and mobility, and the justice system. And the last part of our plan speaks to our regional role and aspirations. We know that there is a need for increased coordination and cross-sector solutions that match the scale of inequities we face. We at King County are committed to regional collaboration on equity issues for greater and more sustained change. Now let me speak to you a little bit about the connection between our ESJ strategic plan and the executive's priority for investing in you. Investing in you, our comprehensive people strategy, has been developed and shaped by our investments in employees strategy, guided by our strategy with around transparent and accountable leadership, and all of the details, the goals, the objectives, the very specific actions and minimum standards that you will find in the workforce and workplace equity goal area of the strategic plan. All of these components have shaped what we know as the comprehensive people strategy, otherwise investing in you. Now that you have a good understanding of why our plan was created, how the strategic plan has been created, the vision, the values that we're leading in ways to implement the strategic plan, our theory of change, and how the plan is structured, let me walk you through, give you a highlight of your responsibilities and opportunities as a manager and supervisor as provided and directed in the strategic plan. This is not an exhaustive list. These are only merely highlights and some of the more important areas for leaders and supervisors and managers to engage in implementing and advancing equity within the institution. The most paramount, one of the most important areas for managers and supervisors to be able to advance racial equity work within King County is to lead with racial justice in the workplace in ways that promotes a culture of equity, inclusion, and belonging. You also have responsibilities to develop employees as change agents and advance equitable outcomes in employee engagement by tackling and addressing disparities in employee experiences within your work groups. The plan asks managers and supervisors to have, engage with, and hold accountable to equity and social justice goals and measures in performance appraisals for all managers and supervisors, and also within your work teams. You're tasked to increase racial diversity and cultural diversity in highest paid leadership and management roles, because that is where that level of diversity is lacking. And we also understand in order for us to become a culturally responsive workforce at all levels, we need to be able to focus our efforts to increasing racial and cultural diversity in those positions. It is also an economic development strategy. The plan also asks managers and supervisors to focus on employee development, particularly for your frontline and lowest paid employees who are also the Black, Indigenous, and communities of color employees. And that is because institutionally and historically and currently, our frontline employees, particularly those who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, bear the greatest brunt of institutional inequities. And so the plan is focused on improving their outcomes, particularly through employee development and growth. You have responsibilities to create and support shared decision-making within your teams as a means of power sharing. And it's important to integrate equity analysis and outcomes into budgeting and resource allocation for your operations and services. I know that sounds like a lot, and it might be, and it's never too late to start. We've outlined some specific actions you can take to begin with. For example, engage in healthy conflict. That means to be able to address microaggressions, disrupt business as usual, embracing difference as an asset, and being able to challenge the status quo. It means to be able to encourage and support your employees to be ESG change agents. There's a variety of ways you can do that, including promoting resiliency and capacity building for your Black, Native, and Indigenous and people of color employees within the groups you manage. Share information about access and being able to participate in affinity group opportunities with your staff and encourage their participation. Support them in being involved with your department and agency equity teams. And learn to coach employees on how to center equity in the work that they do every day. And part of that also means being able to prioritize equitable employee development for your teams. That means ensuring that employees have active employee development plans, all employees, should they want that. Ensuring that employees are able to access and attend and engage with and learn from trainings on race, racism, and whiteness. And that we're transparently sharing all job opportunities, all special duty job opportunities and professional development opportunities within your teams, and that those opportunities aren't just shared with a handful of people. This work needs to be made transparent so that all people have equitable opportunities to grow and develop at King County. Learn to lead with racial justice. You may be a different part on your journey on this. For some of you, it might mean that you're learning to start conversations with your work groups about how equity and social justice is a part of the work that you do. Learn about and engage with your agency's ESJ work plan that help implement the ESJ strategic plan. Learn about what that work plan within your agencies means for your work teams. For some of you, it might mean, for all of you, it might mean attending trainings and learning opportunities on race, racism, and whiteness. There are ways to be able to identify and make progress on ESJ goals in your performance appraisals, and be able to practice self-reflection about your racial and other identities that shape you, your lived experience, and how you engage in your workplace. Equity is a journey. It's not a destination. It's a space for continual growth and learning and challenge and discomfort. Discuss and tackle disparities in employee well-being. We do not have an equitable institution yet. There are disparities in employee experiences and well-being, particularly based on one's race, their pay status, where they are in the institution, frontline or upper management, a wide host of things that you can look to within the employee engagement survey to really understand and being able to be intentional about tackling the disparities that are seen within your teams around employee well-being. The key to all of this is being intentional, that you have an action plan for how you're going to do this work within your teams, and that you get started. Identify and make progress on your ESJ goals, share information about affinity groups, encourage and support your employees' participation within agency teams, discuss and tackle disparities in employee experiences as a part of your employee engagement action plans. Learn about and engage with your agency's ESJ work to understand how to connect the dots and how to amplify that work within your own team and within your agency. Start conversations with your work groups about how equity and social justice is a part of the work that you do, regardless of the work that you do. And focus on the 4 compacts. These are directly from our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, Ms. Anita Whitfield. Share power, disrupt business as usual, replace it with something better, and get comfortable with discomfort. The things here on the action plan is a short list. There's lots of other ways you can get started. But if you don't know where to get started, start here. And you don't have to do this alone. There are resources to support you in your growth and your journey as a manager and supervisor who's invested in making sure that you're able to advance equity and social justice as a part of your work and within the institution. There are resources that are available within each agency, folks that you can turn to, connect with, learn from, tap, engage with. And then for you as an individual employee and for your employees who are parts of your teams, we have affinity groups for a variety of different identities. And here's the information of how and who to contact if you want to join an affinity group. With that, thank you for taking time to engage and to learn. And thank you for being able to advance equity work within your teams and at the county.